And so you see those people going now and attacking good people. I know Rob. I could probably text Rob right now. I didn't know Mikey as much, but I know Rob, and I met Mikey a few times. I know Erica. I've met her. And my dedication to Charlie is his legacy. That's all I care about, is his legacy. So I want to take care of his wife. I want to take care of his legacy with Turning Point USA, and I want to push the things that he believed in.
Something has shifted, something few people saw coming. In the middle of grief, confusion, and unanswered questions, a deeper story is unfolding around the legacy of Charlie Kirk, one that raises a critical question: what really holds a movement together when the person at its center is suddenly gone? Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future reports. From the start, those closest to Charlie have made one thing abundantly clear: the people who work beside him every single day were not just colleagues, they were family. They insist that the team surrounding him genuinely loved him, stayed loyal until the very end, and carried out the heavy work of keeping his ideas alive long after he could no longer speak for himself. For many of them, this isn't just a job or an obligation. It's a commitment built on shared vision and shared sacrifice. They describe how Charlie inspired a sense of mission that went far beyond policy discussions or political events. He built an environment where loyalty meant showing up, not only when things were going well but during the most difficult moments. According to those who knew him intimately, this inner circle continues to push themselves every day, not because anyone asked them to, but because they believe it honors the man they cared deeply about. Many of them say their work now is quieter, heavier, and at times emotionally exhausting, yet they press on because they believe Charlie would have done the same for them. This dedication became even more visible following his passing. In the middle of sorrow, confusion, and public speculation, his closest allies focused on preserving the heartbeat of the organization he built. They emphasized that Charlie was not merely a public figure, he was the driving idea behind an entire movement. He shaped the tone, the energy, the purpose, and the direction of the work. Losing him, they say, left not just a leadership gap but an emotional one, a void that people who loved him are still learning to navigate. Yet this team, despite grief and exhaustion, has continued to hold everything together. They keep the programs running, the message grounded, and the mission aligned with what Charlie believed. They insist that this is how they show their love, by protecting his legacy with humility, discipline, and consistency. They acknowledge that no one can fully replace Charlie's presence or influence, but they also believe that carrying his values forward is the most meaningful way to honor the impact he made. And with that loyalty comes deep frustration, because while they work to protect what remains, they also face a wave of accusations that they describe as deeply unfair and painfully untrue. Among the most troubling reactions following Charlie's death were the false allegations directed at several of the individuals closest to him: Erica, his wife, Mikey, a longtime friend and colleague, and others who stood beside him during his final hours. Those defending them say these accusations feel not only hurtful but profoundly unjust, especially considering the emotional weight these individuals were already carrying. Erica, they note, was thrust into unimaginable grief while still trying to protect her children, navigate public pressure, and understand her new reality. Meanwhile, people like Mikey, who had worked closely with Charlie, suddenly found themselves the focus of speculation from strangers who had never met them. For those who knew the truth of their relationships, this was not just frustrating, it was heartbreaking. According to close associates, these individuals did exactly what they were trained and expected to do during a moment of crisis. They emphasized that emergency procedures were followed carefully and responsibly. They argue that assumptions made by people unfamiliar with those protocols have fueled unnecessary confusion. And beyond the facts themselves, they stress that these accusations have added emotional harm to people who were already experiencing overwhelming grief. Defenders insist that the individuals targeted were the same people who stood beside Charlie day after day, often under immense pressure, and who stayed devoted through the most difficult circumstances. They argue that turning such loyal friends into objects of suspicion is not only unjustified but completely misaligned with the truth of who Charlie trusted and loved. For many of his allies, this experience has served as a sobering reminder of how quickly misinformation can spread in emotionally charged environments. They express concern that people's pain and confusion have made them vulnerable to unfounded assumptions. They emphasize the importance of slowing down, asking questions responsibly, and exercising compassion toward those who are grieving privately while being judged publicly. Nothing has shaken Charlie's team more than the fact that some of his closest colleagues have received threats, serious ones. They describe these threats as not only disturbing but dangerous, a sign of how quickly frustration can turn into harmful behavior when left unchecked. Many of the individuals being targeted have dedicated years of their lives to supporting Charlie. They worked long hours, traveled constantly, and handled the demands that came with operating a major national organization. Facing hostility now, during their most fragile moments, has left many of them afraid, not only for their own safety but for their families. Those speaking out say these threats are based on rumors rather than evidence. They stress that blaming innocent people only deepens the emotional wounds left by this tragedy. Critics of the threats explain that they undermine the spirit of unity and compassion that Charlie himself advocated. They also note that allowing fear or anger to direct the conversation risks harming the very movement Charlie spent years strengthening. They call on the public to step back, breathe, and think critically before making accusations or acting out of frustration. Sensational claims, they say, do not bring clarity. Instead, they create division at a time when unity is needed most. Replacing empathy with suspicion only compounds the tragedy, and the people being targeted are human beings, friends, parents, colleagues, carrying immense grief of their own. At the center of all these conversations, one theme stands out: loyalty to Charlie's values. His allies believe that the most powerful way to honor him is not through public arguments or online speculation, but by embodying the principles he lived by. They speak often of his devotion to faith, how he prioritized it, studied it, and shaped his life around it. They highlight his commitment to truth, even when it meant confronting difficult conversations or uncomfortable ideas. They remember how he balanced boldness with kindness, challenging people without dehumanizing them. And they point out how often he reminded others that the work they were doing was bigger than any one person, including himself. For them, honoring Charlie's wife is an essential part of honoring him. They describe how deeply he cared for his family, how much joy he found in fatherhood, and how seriously he took the responsibility of protecting his loved ones. Supporting Erica, they say, is a direct continuation of Charlie's heart and priorities. Continuing his mission is not about copying his style or trying to fill his role, something they consider impossible. Instead, they see it as a commitment to carry forward the truth and courage he embodied. They believe Charlie wanted people to stand firm in their convictions, to protect their moral center, and to approach disagreements with clarity and compassion. And so they insist that his mission is not lost, it simply now belongs to those willing to carry it. Some critics have suggested that the hostility directed toward members of Charlie's team may stem from deeper ideological frustrations. They argue that certain individuals, caught in cycles of political intensity or emotional extremism, may have redirected their energy in harmful ways. Some describe this shift as a type of ideological imbalance, where people become so consumed by one issue or narrative that their thinking becomes distorted. Others have used spiritual language, describing how fear, anger, or confusion can make individuals vulnerable to manipulative influences. They worry that, in moments of collective grief, people can turn toward harmful assumptions, allowing suspicion to overshadow compassion. Whether one interprets this shift through moral, psychological, or spiritual language, the consensus is the same: this hostility did not emerge out of clear evidence but out of emotional turbulence. Leaders within the movement warn that when ideology becomes detached from grounding principles, truth, compassion, humility, it can lead to serious fractures. They encourage people to return to core values rather than reacting impulsively to online theories or emotional narratives. In their view, the movement becomes stronger when people step outside the noise and focus on what actually matters. Among the most frustrating claims for Charlie's inner circle is the idea that anyone close to him tried to benefit from his passing or position themselves as his replacement. Those who worked with him push back strongly against this narrative. They explain that no one can replace the role Charlie held, not in personality, leadership style, or public influence. They emphasize that the people working behind the scenes today are doing so quietly, often reluctantly, and with no desire to elevate themselves. Their focus, they say, has been on stability, not personal advancement. Some of Charlie's colleagues point out that many of the accusations stem from misunderstandings or from misinterpreting normal organizational duties as signs of hidden ambition. They argue that what looks like stepping forward to outsiders may actually be individuals simply fulfilling responsibilities that Charlie would have wanted someone to uphold. They believe these assumptions do not reflect the character of the people being accused. Instead, they show how easily grief can distort perception when individuals are desperate for explanations. Another growing concern involves media figures or platforms that have begun giving space to voices known for hostility toward Charlie or his organization. His allies say this development is troubling, not because people should be silenced, but because platforming antagonistic voices without critical examination can unintentionally legitimize misinformation. They caution that giving a microphone to individuals who have previously undermined the organization risks spreading narratives that are detached from facts. Instead of fostering meaningful dialogue, it can deepen confusion and push public perception further from the truth. Those closest to Charlie have repeatedly emphasized a message that feels increasingly rare in today's media environment: meaningful journalism requires context, accountability, and mature discernment. They argue that without these pillars, public discourse can quickly become distorted, less about truth and more about theatrics. According to them, elevating individuals who have built their entire public presence on provocation rather than evidence undermines the very foundation of responsible communication. To them, journalism is not simply about speaking loudly, it is about speaking truthfully. It is about weighing information, evaluating motives, and protecting the public from narratives that are designed to inflame rather than inform. This concern has grown especially urgent in moments where emotions run high and facts are still emerging. They stress that during such fragile times, people with large platforms must think carefully about the weight of their choices. Every headline, every interview, every viral clip becomes part of a larger ecosystem that shapes public understanding. Their worry is that some media figures, hungry for attention or eager to exploit public fear, may unintentionally amplify voices whose main currency is outrage rather than insight. And when the truth is delicate, when details are still forming and speculation is rampant, this kind of amplification can cause more harm than good. A recurring theme among Charlie's allies is the fear that extremist rhetoric may be slowly creeping into circles where Charlie once worked tirelessly to promote balance, fairness, and intellectual integrity. They describe a growing trend where commentary fueled by shock value or anger is being mistaken for boldness or authenticity. To them, this shift is dangerous because it gradually normalizes voices that thrive on division and moral corrosion. While such rhetoric might generate clicks or views, it rarely contributes to deeper understanding. More often than not, it leads to confusion, mistrust, and fractures within communities that were once united by shared principles. Those who were closest to Charlie insist he never aligned himself with such rhetoric. He challenged harmful ideas, but he did so responsibly, grounded in clarity, respect, and a commitment to truth. He refused to use his platform to dehumanize others or distort complex issues. They argue that his approach was grounded not in the desire to win arguments, but in the desire to elevate them. He believed that truth could withstand scrutiny, but only if people approached conversations with humility and sincerity. His allies warned that allowing extreme viewpoints to take root, even under the banner of open dialogue, can reshape a movement in ways Charlie never would have supported. They emphasize that openness does not mean embracing any idea that surfaces. Openness requires structure. It requires moral boundaries. It requires leaders who recognize that not every perspective contributes to progress. Without discernment, openness becomes a gateway through which destructive ideologies gain legitimacy. They remind the public that the heart of Charlie's work was not noise, it was direction. He understood that leadership is measured not by how loudly one can speak, but by how effectively one can guide others toward truth. Authentic openness is thoughtful openness. It invites honest questions and rigorous debate, but it refuses to give harmful rhetoric a free pass simply for the sake of appearing unbiased. If the movement forgets this distinction, they fear it risks drifting far from the values that once gave it strength, unity, and purpose. Among those who continue to carry Charlie's work forward, one theme emerges again and again: the call to return to moral clarity. They speak of godly principles, not as political labels or slogans, but as a framework for personal integrity. To them, these principles represent the compass that guided Charlie's decisions. They believe that navigating conflict, especially during emotionally charged moments, requires more than strategy or public relations. It requires humility, courage, and the wisdom to step back and evaluate what aligns with truth and what does not. They encourage the public to challenge harmful narratives rather than consume them blindly. They urge people to resist false or exaggerated claims and to approach disagreements with honesty and patience. They remind listeners that courage is not about attacking others or escalating tensions. Courage means refusing to compromise truth even when it is unpopular or uncomfortable. Likewise, compassion is not an excuse to avoid difficult conversations. Compassion means entering difficult conversations with care, responsibility, and a genuine desire to understand. In their view, honoring Charlie's legacy means embracing the balance he modeled: boldness without cruelty, conviction without arrogance, strength without abandoning grace. They recall countless moments where Charlie stood firm in his beliefs yet remained open to thoughtful discussion, even with those who opposed him. He recognized that true leadership requires emotional discipline. It requires the ability to separate facts from feelings, motives from perceptions, and truth from noise. To truly honor his life, they argue, the movement must avoid slipping into suspicion, internal conflict, or reactionary rhetoric. His allies emphasize that defending a reputation is not the central mission, maintaining integrity is. Honoring Charlie means holding fast to truth even when rumors swirl and speculation spreads quickly. It means protecting unity when division threatens to fragment communities. It means resisting the pull of confusion, fear, or ideological extremism, forces that can easily disrupt the stability Charlie worked so hard to protect. For those who walk beside him, Charlie's legacy serves as a call to consistency. They believe the movement must remain grounded, faithful, and principled even in moments of uncertainty. The strongest way to carry his memory forward, they insist, is not through emotional reactions or public arguments, but through steadfastness. Through thoughtful leadership. Through clear judgment. Through the ongoing commitment to strengthen the movement he invested so much of his life into. In their eyes, unity is not built on convenience or shared outrage, unity is built on shared truth. And truth endures. It outlasts public confusion, shifting narratives, and emotional turbulence. They fear that if people prioritize speculation over facts, or division over cooperation, they risk weakening the very foundations Charlie helped build. At the same time, they acknowledge that moments like this, moments filled with tension, uncertainty, and conflicting stories, are the moments when communities are most vulnerable to narratives that prioritize sensation over accuracy. They urge everyone to slow down. To breathe. To resist the instinct to react impulsively. They encourage the public to seek clarity, not chaos, and to remember that in emotionally charged moments, the loudest voices are not always the wisest. They hope that by focusing on truth, patience, and accountability, people can move past confusion and return to what truly matters: integrity, unity, and moral grounding. To them, these values were the backbone of Charlie's work, and they believe they should continue to guide the movement in uncertain times. In the end, the message woven through all these conversations is simple yet profound: unity built on truth lasts far longer than confusion fueled by speculation. Where there is clarity, there is direction. Where there is truth, there is stability. And where there is moral grounding, there is strength. Those who knew Charlie best believe that as long as these principles remain at the center of the movement, his impact will continue to shape the future. His legacy is not just a memory, it is a blueprint, a reminder that leadership rooted in truth creates lasting influence. Honoring him requires discipline, discernment, and the refusal to compromise values for temporary emotional satisfaction. As the story continues to evolve and new developments emerge, they encourage the public to remain thoughtful, patient, and informed. The path forward is not found in reaction, but in reflection. It is not found in division, but in unity grounded in truth. Subscribe to stay informed as we continue to follow this developing story.